let's take one by one. First question is the capability of a commodity to satisfy human wants is. So what's the term that we use to show or define the capability of a commodity to satisfy human wants? Can someone give me the answer in the chat box at least? Right, so consumption, yes, but when you see the word satisfy, we know we're talking about satisfaction, isn't it? That's called utility. So the answer is B, utility. Question number 2, the additional utility derived from the consumption of an additional unit of commodity is called what? So when you see the word additional, you know what we're talking about, isn't it? What's the answer? Very good, marginal utility, correct. So C, 3. What's the law that defines the demand curve to slope downwards? So we went through this morning also. It's the law that defines demand curve to slope down, meaning why does it slope down? Because of diminishing marginal returns, isn't it? As we consume more and more, the marginal utility that you get reduces gradually. That's called the law of diminishing marginal returns. 4. How do we calculate marginal utility? Answers, please. Yes, I can see a few answers. So how do we calculate marginal utility? So it's talking about this. So you have total utility, and if you have Q on this side, we saw that the total utility function increases, comes to a maximum and decreases. And we could also plot the marginal utility. What was marginal utility? Marginal utility is the utility that you get, additional utility if you increase total utility by 1 unit. Sorry, quantity by 1 unit. එකක් වැඩිපුර consume කරොත් ලැබෙන වැඩිපුර ලැබෙන මුළු utility එක. So that's called marginal utility. Therefore, marginal utility is the slope of the total utility function, and if you plot that on the same graph, you will see that when total utility is a maximum, the marginal utility becomes 0. Now this is the marginal utility. Mu is marginal utility. And so how would you calculate marginal utility? Marginal utility is we said change. Now this little triangle is delta, meaning small change. Total utility. Change in the total utility to a change in what? Quantity. Quantity එකකින් වැඩි කරනකොට වැඩිපුර ලැබෙන utility. Right? So what's the answer then? TU over Q. Right? It's all there in the on your slides. Right. Question 5, marginal utility. Okay, now you can see this on the graph. What happens to marginal utility? What would be the answer? Very good. It can be positive. So on this part, it's positive. Here, after this point, it's negative. And at this point, it's 0. So it can be positive, negative, or 0. Then for the maximum, so feel free to stop me if you need to, if you want me to clarify that again or explain that again. For the maximum satisfaction of consumer, what's the answer for this one? We said that if something is free, you can go up to total utility maximum point. But if that good or commodity is price එකක් තියෙනවා now, how would you find that point? It's the point where the marginal utility equals price. Right? Price එකට marginal utility සමාන වෙන point එකේදී. So what would be the answer? The marginal utility of a good should be equal to price.
Recording in progress.
And then, why is the consumer spending restricted? Why? Because we want to maximize utility, but because of the budget, our spending is restricted. So after reaching the saturation point, consumption of the additional units of commodity was what? After reaching the consumption saturation point, which is this point, what happens? You could see that the total utility falls and the marginal utility becomes negative, isn't it? Total utility function marginal utility function negative. This part is positive and this side is negative. Question number 10. So we saw that consumption of a free good, if it's not priced, ඕනම commodity එකක් free now, we said that the total utility derived can be maximized. Right? Otherwise, once it's priced, we use this function to find the optimum point. Question 11. The curve derived by joining bundles which give equal level of satisfaction. What was this called? What was the graph that gave us, let's say, bundle 1 or good 1 and good 2. What was this called? Different bundles. It gives the same level of satisfaction. Any answers? Yes, good. Indifference curve. 12. So according to the indifference curve, at the equilibrium, we saw that the slope of the indifference curve, slope of the indifference curve equals slope of the Bashert line. And number 13, the slope of the indifference curve is called marginal rate of substitution. So we didn't go into detail on marginal rate of substitution, so you might not expect any questions on the slope. An indifference curve lays right of another indifference curve results in what? So indifference curve, and we said that as you move up from the origin, the utility increases, isn't it? Like this is 5, this would be 10, 20, likewise 50, 100. So we can see an indifference curve lays right if another indifference curve results in greater utility or greater satisfaction. Satisfaction up and a set of ICs drawn in a graph is called what? We said it's called indifference curve. But if you draw several, it's called a map, indifference map. The difference between microeconomics and macro is micro studies effects of this one isn't it? Microeconomics studies decisions of individuals, whereas in macroeconomics you study the entire national economy or the bigger picture. Which is not considered a key question in economics. We know the key questions are what, to produce how, and for whom. So this would be a question that's not listed under the 3. The concept of laissez-faire, or what it means is government should stay out of business, was introduced by which economist? The father of economics, Adam Smith. The loss of value of the next best choice defines a concept of what? Answers? Opportunity cost. Next best alternative or next best choice. The value of the next best choice is called opportunity cost. Right. I think this, of course, we did. So all of the following categories are factors of production except what? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship are the factors. So the answer is B, money. Right, so like I said, now this is more focused on what we covered on the first day. So you might not get a lot of questions on utility and demand, but you will get questions on demand curve shifts, supply curve, production function, like for example, you might get a question like this one here. So how would you answer this question? What's the answer? The curve derived by joining all input bundles which give equal level of output. What did we call this curve? Remember, it was very similar to this curve. What did we call this? The isoquant, doesn't it? The answer is isoquant. So go through the slides again. And how would you calculate the marginal product? So how did you calculate the marginal utility? This total utility over the change in Q. Marginal product would be total product, change in total product over change in input. If input is X, then marginal cost, if you can remember, is change in the total cost over change in output, isn't it? So, and there'll be questions from market structures. For example, what type of a market will have the highest market power, right? So that would be monopoly. Or what type of a market will have the highest number of sellers? That would be what? The perfectly competitive market. Yeah, so that type of questions we can expect for the exam. Anything that you want to discuss or you want me to clarify? So go through the graphs, these calculations. You will not get calculations to do, but you will have to be familiar with sort of the demand function, what factors can shift the demand up and down, market equilibrium change and factors. Now it's all there in your slides, right? Okay, 20 and 21. Question number 20, the curve derived by joining all bundles which give the same level of satisfaction. Okay, what it means is all bundles which give the equal level of satisfaction. What did we call? You can remember. It's this one, isn't it? Indifference curve. Different bundles, but same level of satisfaction. Question number 21 was about factors of production. I think we discussed that in the first day. These are the factors of production: land, labor, capital and management. So money is not included in the list. I mean, it does come under another key. It's called financial capital, but it's not a category of factor of production, right? Right, so if that's clear, then I think we can go to today's slides. Right, so now we'll talk about some applications of what we have learned. So we said there are two broad areas and under which there are some sub areas. So food economics is something that agriculturists specialize in, economics of agri-food industry, right? So when you talk about agricultural economics or food economics, what are we interested in? We are trying to, or we try to apply the economic principles that you have been learning over these 2 weeks to understand how the food industry works, agriculture industry works, and how you could improve the industry and make certain decisions when it comes to what production, food and agri-food production, marketing, distribution, what and demand, consumption, isn't it? Consumption, supply, and distribution mainly, right? So in the food industry particularly, you are interested in understanding the economics of food safety, food quality, and food security. So these are three very categorically different terms. What do we mean by the term food security? This term, right? Food security. සිංහලෙන් කිව්වොත් අපි කියන ආහාර සුරක්ෂිතතාවය කියලානේ. Security කියලා කියන්නේ. එතකොට these are there are 4 dimensions that sort of underpins or that the food security is made up of, right? There are 4 dimensions. Food secure කියලා කියන්න නම් first thing, now food security can be measured at household level. The individual කෙනෙක්ගේ food security බලන්න පුළුවන්. Household එක, right? ගෙදරක food security. That's the smallest unit that we would consider. Or we can actually look at the province-wise, like the provincial food security, country's food security, or regional, like South Asia, South America, Africa. Likewise, regionally, we can look at food security. Right. So if you are to be food secure, there are 4 dimensions that we look at. One is availability. We try to look at whether food is available to everybody or that household or that individual. Right? It should be available. Eggs, butter, vegetables, whatever the food, it should be available. It could be in a roadside shop, or it could be in a supermarket. It could be anywhere. It should be available for you to purchase, right? If it's not there, then it affects the level of food security. Availability and accessibility. Accessibility is it's available, but if you can't go and get it, it's not accessible, right? Echo, you have to go and get it, right? Purchase it, or you should be able to get it to your doorstep, or you should be able to find it from your household. Home garden එකෙන් හරි කොහෙන් හරි හොයාගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. share කරලා හරි accessible වෙන්න ඕන. And you have to have the purchasing power. අපිට සල්ලි දීලා හරි එක if it's priced, then you should be able to should be accessible, right? Then, so now you can remember during the COVID period, there was a huge impact on food security because some lot of food is not available. Some lot, even if it's available, you can't go and get it. So that affects the food security. Third dimension is utility or utilization. Sorry, utilization. So utilization is you should be able to utilize it properly. Properly in the sense you should know how to store the products properly, food, and consume, how to cook, so that you preserve the nutritional quality of the food, right? Food security, nutritional security, that comes under food security, right? The utilization is important. And the fourth one is continuity, or stability. All three will be there. Food available on any food, right? Food is available, you are able to access it, you know how to utilize it properly. But if it's not stable or continuous, for example, in certain livelihood groups, farmers, season harvest season, the food security levels are high, but thereafter the food security levels will go down because sometimes in some seasons, if they don't get a good harvest, they don't have money, affordability is less. Therefore, that affects the continuity. To be food secure, all these four dimensions should be fulfilled. Making ekak hari නැති වුණොත් හෝ අඩු වුණොත්, that affects food security. Food security, and we call it food insecure now, right? We know what we are going through these days. We don't have money to purchase, or even if we have money, the products are not there. So now our food security levels have gone down because of these issues, right? So global organizations such as the United Nations, Food and Agriculture organizations, they are continuously monitoring what happens to certain regions, to certain countries in terms of food security, because it's a basic human right. And there will be aid or support given by looking at how we are progressing in terms of food security. So that is food security. We are not going to go into detail in food security, but we will look at a little bit on food safety and quality, right? Food safety and quality is also very important in the food industry. And if you look at the industry as a whole, it's an ever-growing industry, isn't it? So despite what has been happening over the year, the COVID pandemic situation, even through COVID, food industry was developing, more businesses were coming up, more online businesses came up, and there was more, even now, there are more job opportunities coming up in the food industry. But we can expect, like even with the crisis, there will still be opportunities in the industry because it's an ever-growing industry. There are lots more opportunities in the global community for international trade. So we also are interested in identifying how this industry is changing, right? One is it will change with the population. Population is ever-growing, and certain parts of the world you will see that you see more senior citizens because of the age population would be greater in certain parts, and if there are more, then there will be more focus on healthy products, healthy options. So that will be another sort of an industry. There will be niche industries created under which, then because of increase of life expectancy, and improvement in level of education, People will demand different things, healthier products, convenient products, and so on. Urbanization can have an impact. So these are again something similar to what we discussed in the first day in terms of demand. So the food industry will continuously have to monitor the structural changes, how demography change, and accordingly will have to cater the demand, and the supply will also be decided on how these things will vary. So some of the consumer trends that you would see today is more safety. People are more concerned on safety, especially in the developed world. Even now, I mean, we look for products with the high nutritional quality. There was a trend, hype about organic products. Then, products with functional foods, micronutrients. So health benefits are very much in focus these days. So that brings us to certification, isn't it? Quality certificates are important. So that's something the food industry will have to look into or can expect. Then corporate social responsibility of the industry. Social media, there's a lot of campaigns, advertisements, articles on nutritional value of certain products, and also new businesses coming up on social media. Lots of new innovations of products, value-added products coming into the market. Convenience is also very important. And then we talk about sustainability and eco-labeling. Now, this is also a concern because for economists, because in countries, especially in the developing world, you see a lot of what we call as greenwashing, right? Greenwashing. What we mean by greenwashing is you see, if you go to the supermarket and you look at any type of product, be it consumable or not, especially in food products, you see labels saying that these are organic products, so 100% natural, 100% organic. But can we really trust these labels? Who would verify or authenticate them? Like, how can you validate the authenticity of these labels? So that greenwashing, green product organic natural product it's not really what they say. We are paying more because we know that organic products, for example, are expensive. So you're paying more for something which is not true. So that's called greenwashing. So now, today, the Ministry of Environment is trying to create an eco-labeling framework for several industries so that, to build the trust. So people, if you want, you can verify the authenticity of these labels. And so you won't pay more for something fake, something that is not true. So we just looked at some. So you can see a lot of these trends in the global market compared to developing world. For example, in the developed countries, you see a lot of there are formally registered companies in the food processing sector. People are more interested in buying branded products. And if there are any faults, defects, health hazards, food products are being recalled, which you don't see in the developing countries much. So, so I hope you had a chance to go through this slide. So there's a difference in high income versus low income countries or economies. Right, so when it comes to food quality and safety, this is made up of 4 pillars. I mean, there should be a policy for food safety and policy for each country, and there should be a scientific process to determine the quality and safety of the product, and that should be certified. Certain certifications, HACCP or ISO or SLSI standards. Then there should be a law to so that there should be a law and regulations enforced. So whoever does that do not comply with these standards will be fined or sued or will have to suffer the consequences. Right. So what's the difference between safety and quality? Safety is a binary factor. The food is either safe or not, right? There's no continuum. It's either safe or not. Quality is actually, it's a bit subjective, and it's like a spectrum or a continuum where the perception of quality, my perception, it might be different from your perception. So there are different attributes that sort of outlines the quality of a product. It could be the appearance, the color, flavor, texture. So different quality attributes will determine the quality of a product, right? And there's a difference between quality assurance and quality control. What do we mean by quality assurance? Is you assure the quality of a product from start to end, from the time you source inputs until the end. Difference, for example, if you have certification like HACCP or GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices, that indicates that the entire process from where you find the inputs to the final product, the entire process is assured for its quality, right? But quality control actually deals with the end product, where you look at, how many defects are there, what are the reasons for these defects, where you focus on the final product. If there are 100 units produced, there are 5 defective products. That quality control deals with that. So there are tools that we use for quality control, like histograms, cause and effect diagrams, or fishbone diagrams. For example, if you find that there's a percentage of defected products, then the entire group would sit together, and it could be different divisions from the company, and then we talk about what went wrong. And that's called a fishbone diagram. So these are some of the tools that you can use for quality control. Right. So as from an economic point of view, we are also interested in studying food quality. Right. So what, in your mind or in your idea, what defines food quality for you? So these are some of the factors that would decide or determine the quality of a product, isn't it? Whether there are any foodborne diseases or animal-related diseases, we call them zoonotic diseases. That there are any food scandals, something that happened recently with adulteration, adding, mixing water with milk, or what happened with the coconut oil issue and SLSI. So there's a famous food economist called Caswell, and she has come up with, this is a very famous or widely used model that we can use to estimate the food quality of a product, right? So there are several categories under Caswell's classification. So food quality can be determined by food safety, nutrition, if the label says that this product, let's say it's a cordial, and this cordial, or it's a milk powder, this milk powder includes these nutrients, and that product will have to, if you do a lab test, that product will have to have those nutrients. And the taste, appearance, right? Size will have to comply with the standards. So let's take an example. Now, if you take milk powder, so in the first column, you see the food quality attributes, and the second column, you can see how you can actually quantify whether complies with the standards. Or, for example, if this packet says 75 grams, here, so if the packet says 75 grams, it will have to have that weight, right? And if it includes these flavors, then it will have to have those flavors. Likewise, you can measure the quality of the product. Right, so food industry or agri-food industry is an industry where we see a lot of misinformation or asymmetric or unbalanced information. Right. So if you are to learn about the quality of a product, we say we learn the quality using 3 types of attributes. One is called search attributes, where the consumers can determine the product quality by looking at the product, right? If you go to the market, or if you go to a supermarket, or if you go to a bakery, buy a loaf of bread, if you usually buy every day from the same bakery, and if the color has changed today, then you know that there is a problem with quality, right? If it's a bit more burnt or if the size is different, by looking at it, you can know about the quality of the product. So those are called search attributes. The second type is called experience attributes, meaning the consumer cannot determine the product quality until you buy and consume it. For example, taste, right? Let's say those flavored milk cartons, small ones, or fruit juice bottles. Unless you taste it, you can't say anything about the quality. If you have been buying the same brand for some time, you know the quality of it. But if the taste is different, if you feel that it's spoiled, then there's a problem with the quality. So those are called experience attributes. You have to consume to determine the quality. The third one is the most crucial one, credence attributes. Consumers cannot judge the quality even by consumption. Right? Can you think of examples? For example, pesticide use, right? Now, let's say now tea, there's a maximum residue limit, isn't it? MRL limit. But, okay, the label would say, okay, now this complies with these standards, but unless you do a lab test, right, in the local market, how can we determine the quality of the standards, quality of the product? Even if you consume it, you cannot say, right? You can't distinguish between whether this has actually used organic fertilizer or whether this complies with the maximum residue limits. So these are called credence attributes, right? 100% organic keyword, natural keyword, you cannot test it by consumption. So these attributes create lots of problems that the food economists are interested in. So why? Because of asymmetric information. Right, so information is very important in economics or for the economy. Problems, or we say markets, fail if there are asymmetric information. What do we mean by asymmetric or imbalanced, or if this information is not the same for all parties? For example, take market, right? So there are buyers and sellers in the market. So we know if you sellers usually have more. If you take a supermarket, the sellers or the grocery, the seller has more information than the buyer, right? ඒගොල්ලෝ date එක වෙනස් කරලා expiry date එක විකුණුවත් අපිට ඒක consume කරනකන් සමහරවිට හොයාගන්න බැරි වෙනවා. That's because the seller has more information. Seller knows where it was produced, how it was produced, but the buyer has very little information. අපිට information ගන්න පුළුවන් එකම විදිය ගොඩක් වෙලාවට label එකේ. Right? So we should be able to trust the label. So trust is also very important, and we see a lot of studies on trust and information economics. Right? So coming back to asymmetric information. So in an ideal market, like in the perfectly competitive market that we discussed, we said that there is transparent and perfect information, right? But we know in the real world it's not. There are lots of imperfect competition. Therefore, we see asymmetric information in the market. Right, so let's take a few examples. Like in the medical sector, we know that the hospital or the doctors have more information than us when it comes to ailments or sicknesses, right? If you fall sick, you have to trust the doctor because the doctor is qualified with an MBBS degree to prescribe medicine and diagnose your problem. But so one party has more information than the other party. Like a party with very poor information now, because we don't have the same degree, we don't know how to diagnose the problem. So we have less information. So if the hospital asks us to take, whatever the tests or whatever the medicine that they prescribe, then we'll have to buy them, right? Sometimes we might be paying more for something that's not needed because of information. So if there was some way that you could actually verify, then the market would be better off, right? Nobody is paying more. Nobody's cost is more. Nobody is worse off than the other party. Insurance, if we know there's an insurance firm and you go to buy insurance from the firm, let's say life insurance. I mean, if there's no medical checkup done, even if there's medical checkup done, if the company asks you questions like, if you have your family had any illnesses, diabetes, heart attacks, and if you lie, then they will still have to believe you if there's no way of verifying what you are saying, right? And then you purchase this insurance claim and you end up with a heart attack in the very near future, then that is a burden for the company. That's a cost to the company, isn't it? If everybody lies, right? Life insurance, vehicle insurance, that's going to lead to market failure. Therefore, they have come up with certain verification methods to verify whether these claims are true or not. So used cars, we'll talk about that in a little while. So imperfect information can lead to market failure. So it's important to identify, especially you will see a lot of misinformation or imperfect information in the agri-food sector. Right, so we divide this type of information asymmetry into two types, moral hazard and adverse selection. What is the difference? Difference depends on the time, the information asymmetry at the time of entering into the contract. Okay, let's see an example. Now take moral hazard. Information is symmetric before the contract and asymmetric after the contract. So this is also called hidden action, right? Hidden action. Okay, now take this example. Now let's say there's a job interview. There's a vacancy in a firm, right? So the interviewer is there and all of you are going for this interview. There are about 90 of you in the class and all of you will take the same diploma certificate, right? Diploma in Agriculture and Plantation Management. So you get the certificate from a Commonwealth University. So it sort of complies with the Sri Lanka qualifications framework, the number of credits and so on. So when the company sees that this diploma certificate, it gives them an idea. Now you have followed these subjects and you have completed these credits and you've successfully taken the test assessment and got the degree. So all of you have the same standard qualification, isn't it? So all 90 will go to the interview, but only one person will be selected. Now, at the time of entering into the contract or where you have the interview, you have symmetric information, because of the degree certificate, or sorry, the diploma certificate, the interviewer has the same, you and the interviewer has the same level of information, because the interviewer can verify your qualification. But once you enter into the contract, the interviewer selects one person out of the lot, and once you are selected, your inner motives, hidden action plays out, right? Maybe although you have the same degree certificate, you are not competent enough. You are a lazy person. You don't, you ignore work, or you don't, you're not a good team player. You create conflicts. Therefore, your hidden actions play out. Right? So that's the example of moral hazard. And that's going to be a cost to the company. Right? So we see a lot of moral hazard in salesman efforts. People come, salespersons come with different types of products to your doorstep, and they say, this product is just this and that, lots of features. But once you start using it, you pay for it, you purchase it, and you're using it, and you see that doesn't really do what it's supposed to do, right? Medical industry is the same. Drive faster insurance, for example, like in the case of vehicle insurance, let's say you want to get a vehicle insurance and you are a reckless driver, but you claim to be a very safe driver. You say, I drive safe, I park in a very safe area, and you get the insurance. So the insurance firm will believe you. And once you get the insurance, now that you have the insurance, you might drive fast, you might, drive recklessly, or you might park it in an unsafe area. So if that happens, that's going to be a cost to the firm, right? If everybody does the same, that's going to be a cost for the firm. So that's moral hazard, where hidden action plays out after you enter into the contract. But adverse selection is where there's information asymmetry even before you enter into the contract. Right, let's take an example. A classic example that you would see in textbooks of economics is the market for lemons, right? So we call it the market for lemons. The second-hand car industry, it's called markets for lemons because there are, let's say, there are two types of cars in the second-hand car market. Car market, used cars. This good quality cars, high quality cars. The other would be low quality cars, right? So high quality cars are called plums, right? High and low. Plums high quality cars. Other ones are called lemons, right? So if both these types of cars are in the same market, right? And if there's no way of verifying, right? Let's say the car market will have to sell all the cars on average, or each car will be sold at 1,000 rupees. So both high and low quality cars will have to sell at this price if there's no way to verify, right? Test verification method they will have to come down to this price. So what would happen now? Once you purchase, you pay the same price even for a low quality car, and then the buyer will be in trouble. So, and the high quality car owners will not want to sell at this price. So what would happen is these high quality cars will leave the market, and it will only have lemons left. And the lemons can do whatever they want because there are only lemons in the market. They can artificially, vary the prices. And with time, this market will collapse, and that would lead to, we call it market failure, right? So if there are no verification method or then to check the quality, that is going to create market failure. So that's the idea behind asymmetric information. So therefore, the industry, especially the food agriculture industry, is trying to develop techniques or methods to verify the quality. For example, signaling, advertisement, labeling is very, very important to build trust and reputation of the consumers, right? Branding, certification to ensure that the quality is maintained. And so here there are lots of labels. So in the coming years, there'll be a bit lot more stricter. For example, if you have a fair trade certificate, that implies that you not only have quality products, but you also, as a firm, is interested in the welfare of the people, right? The welfare of the people that work for your employees, their families have a good life condition, so a standard of life. So therefore, labeling is also very important in maintaining quality. And that also reduces the transaction cost of the firm. Now, transaction cost in a firm means the cost of searching, negotiation, and entering into contracts. So if you are a firm, you do B2C or business to end consumer sales or B2B. So to do that, if you have to search for consumers every time, if you have to search for sellers every time, then that's a cost. So this will also be reduced through these strategies. So cost of transaction can be reduced in the long run. Right. So we know that having, for example, quality assurance or quality certification in a firm can be very costly in the short run. But why would a firm want to do this? Right. So drivers, what factors that drive the firm, anyone to do something in economics is called economic incentives. Right. For example, why would a firm want to adopt a quality certificate? Right? Why, as a person, would you want to protect the forest near you, the beach near you? Why would the government want to protect the beaches in the country? Why would a factory or for a company want to protect its environment? So these are called economic incentives. Right? If you talk about quality, let's take an example. Now, food quality certificate like ISO, let's say 21,000 or 20 or 19,000. Why would you want to adopt this certification or certificate in the firm? Because it's very costly. You have to, you might have to purchase new equipment. You will have to train your employees. You will have to keep records. You will have to have auditors coming regularly to check whether you comply with the standards. It'll make a logo cost, right? So why would you want to do something that is costly? And those drivers, those motives, those reasons are called economic incentives. So there are two types of economic incentives for a firm or for anyone. One is called carrots, right? Carrots. The other is called stick, right? What's the difference? We know why you would use a carrot, right? So if you show a carrot to the rabbit, what happens? Now, you can incentivize somebody with a carrot. Right? So it's sort of a way of enticing somebody with a carrot. So that person will move towards or push themselves towards that particular action. Right? I'll take an example. The other one is stick. Stick, you take a stick and stick. If you don't comply, then the government can fine you, right? So you would do something because of these two reasons mainly. One is you have some benefits of doing it, and we call them market-based incentives, right? අපි quality assurance certificate එකක් ගත්තත් අපි හිතමු අපි adopt කරා කියලා HACCP or ISO certificate එකක් ගන්නවා certification එකක්. So we do this because in the long run I know it's going to reduce my cost of the firm. මගේ efficiency එක වැඩි කරනවා. ඒක labor efficiency එහෙම නැත්නම් input use efficiency එක වැඩි කරන හින්දා වෙනවා. Because everything is recorded in place. එහෙම නැත්නම් human resource efficiency වැඩි වෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් sales and revenue වැඩි වෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් reputation, people would say, okay, now this is an ISO company, so we don't have to worry about purchasing from me. Commercial pressure, media, people who live around my company are pressuring me to sort of, dispose my waste properly, limit my emissions. Therefore, there's pressure from the external environment. So these are market-based incentives. Habai, nobody is fining me. I will not suffer consequences, but I do because of the benefits that I get. So those are called market-based incentives. Regulation. Now that's a stick. The government will make certain things mandatory. Government, food industry, with agriculture industry, firms, agribusinesses will have to adopt ISO 1000. That's a mandatory requirement. If you don't do that, you can get fined, you can get sued, or you will end up in jail, right? So therefore, rules, regulations, laws are all sticks. When a benefit it's called carrots or market-based incentives. Reasons it could be because of altruism. Right? Altruism, meaning it's not because of carrot. But a monetary benefit, financial benefit, government mandatory mandatory requirement rule regulation, but it's purely out of altruism, right? Out of good faith. Good faith, right? You do it because, for example, if I produce food, if I have a food producing company, I produce food, quality, healthy, nutritious food, because I have I care about the people, I care about the environment. So I do it not for any benefits, but only because I care about something, right? So that's called altruism. So these are all economic incentives. Right. So these are also important because we know that when it comes to international trade, we talk about two types of barriers to trade. One is called tariff barriers, right? Taxes on international trade is called tariffs. So tariff barrier that affects the traded. The other is called non-tariff barriers, right? Non-tariff barrier quality standards. So, for example, certain countries such as the EU might ask us to have certain standard. Otherwise, they will not allow us to send our goods to the European Union, right? So that can be a non-tariff barrier. So therefore, it's important for us to have these quality certifications in place, right? So I won't go into much detail on that then. So how, now we looked at principles of economics, but how would you do an actual estimation? So if you are a student of economics, or if you are an economist, you would want to know, do certain analysis to, we said on the first day that economics is a science. We make objective decisions, right? Objective inferences. So to do that, you follow certain scientific methodologies. So there are several types of analysis that you can do. For example, a simple analysis is a sensor testing in terms of food quality. If you want to analyze the quality of a product, if you, let's say your firm produces a new value-added product. Let's say you produce a new type of tea, right? A flavored tea. So if you want to do a market analysis, or if you want to test your product before it goes to the market, you might do sensory testing. You might get a group of people, like 30 to 60 people, podi group that's for a sensory test. So podi group table matrix we have appearance, texture, smell, and then you have a Likert scale, right? So now scale is where you give a rating. Let's say Kendra Dahayat rate right? And somebody might say 10, another person might give it an 8, right? 7. Now you analyze this and you can get an idea of the quality of the product, right? Sensory quality. Then another very widely used tool is questionnaires, right? So questionnaires for social science research, for economic research, you use questionnaires a lot. Now, from a questionnaire, you can collect data. Now, when it comes to data, there are two types, isn't it? Data, primary data and secondary data. Primary data, you collect directly from your respondents using a questionnaire. So you make a questionnaire on what you want to analyze. For example, if you want to do a demand analysis, you might want to find how much they consume at different prices, their age, their education level, their gender, their marital status, their taste and preferences, income, and so on. You will collect using a questionnaire. The second type is secondary data, where you use reports, central bank reports, time series analysis, time series analysis, අවුරුදු 20ක 30ක 50ක data ගන්න පුළුවන් from World Bank data or central bank data or census and statistics department reports. And we will get data on prices, goods, quantity of goods, income, how income has changed over the years, people's income, expenditure data, So these we can take and do analysis to look at how demand, supply has changed. You can even forecast into the future, right? Climate data, rainfall data, all these modeled using certain statistical methods. And also there's another method called structural equation modeling, for example, that we use. Now, certain data types, for example, if you want to look at demand depends on what? Price data you can easily find. Demand also depends on age, right? Now age data is also you can easily find category. But what about their perception on organic products? Perception organic products can education level perception. Now this you cannot give a number, right? Perception number that's a qualitative latent variable. In that case, we will give statements reflecting their level of education or their perception, their attitude. So those are qualitative variables, right? So that also can be included in the model with other numerical variables, right? So you can use techniques such as structural equation modeling to do that. So there's so many other models, but some common methods that you might want to look at when you do economic analysis. Right, so I think this we roughly, very briefly discussed last time, how you would determine demand. You collect data for different variables, and using a model, you can estimate this relationship, the demand function. You can do the same for supply function and production function and so on. Right. Okay.
Recording stopped.
Right, so do you have any questions from what we have discussed so far? So if there are no questions, I think we can stop the lecture today. But like I said, there will be a test. So when you start going through the slides, if you find anything difficult or if you need explanations, please feel free to call me, and I'll be happy to help you out. Right? Right. So I think in that case, we will stop the lecture. Right. So the date, I'm not sure. I don't really know the date, but please talk to Dr. Guru K, who's your academic coordinator, and she will let you know. I think you should have it probably next week or the week after. Right? Quiz will basically be from the first two lectures, right? First 2 weeks. And so you might expect like maybe one question from today's lecture, but mostly from what we have covered in the first 2 weeks, because today we discussed applications. So yeah. Any other questions? Right. So in that case, we will wrap up. And okay, thanks for attending the lectures and all the best. Okay.